Okay. We have a 1 o'clock appointment, Development Permit Direct Control District. You here to present, Kim?
Yes, I am.
Go right
Good afternoon.
ahead.
We have Development Permit 2017-42 in Division 5. The proposal is for a dwelling single detached condominium plan 0710284 Unit 105. That is 525 Muirfield Crescent in the hamlet of Lyelta. Owner applicant is Vanity Homes. The parcel size is 7,082 square feet. This is currently zoned direct control DC9 in the Lakes of Muirfield. The applicant is proposing to build a single-family dwelling in the hamlet of Lyelta within the Lakes of Muirfield. The bungalow-style dwelling is 1,309 square feet and is 20 feet 5 inches in height. This property is located within Cell 2, Residential Type 2 of the Direct Control District. Council is responsible for the issuance of development permits for all discretionary uses listed within each development cell as per the Direct Control District. The application meets all provisions of the land use bylaw, and a dwelling single detached is a discretionary use in Cell 2, Residential Type 2 in the DC9 district of the Lakes of Muirfield. So agency circulation was not performed. File review, there were no concerns, and circulation was to all the adjacent neighbors with no responses received. So we have three options. Option 1, to approve the application. Option 2, to refuse the application with reasons given. Or Option 3, to provide an alternative recommendation of council's choosing. The recommendation is to approve Option 1 with the following conditions. This development permit is issued for a new residence defined as a dwelling single detached. No variances have been granted. Development shall proceed according to DC9 districts and comply with all provisions of the land use bylaw. No permanent development shall occur on or over any utility right-of-way or easement. We have our 3 standard notes for the Lakes of Muirfield. Here is the location, right down here. This is the site plan that was provided from the applicant. This is a front entrance garage. And I went out and did a site inspection, and this is looking northeast into the parcel. A little bit of water on that parcel, but I'm sure it'll get filled. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Council's wishes. Ellis?
I so move application DP 2017-42.
With the attached conditions?
Yeah, with the attached.
Any questions? All in favor? Opposed?
I wasn't here to hear that.
Still has to vote if she's in the room? Or if you weren't here for the presentation? You give me any help, Ellen?
I can't help you on that. I never had a situation where councillors come in partway through a motion.
I think,
I don't think.
what did I come through last meeting that was partway through? I was precluded from
I think you have to
voting.
vote.
No, I was I was exempt from voting.
Yeah, well, if it's a public hearing,
It was a
It's
public hearing?
different.
Oh, that's what it was, maybe.
public
That's what-
hearing is different.
Okay.
So it's not a
Okay.
public hearing, I can vote?
Yes.
Okay, then it's on.
You vote for?
Yes, I vote.
Okay, it's carried.
The information prior to the meeting.
I did
Yeah.
have the information prior to me, so.
Okay, it's carried. And we have company 2 from Strathmore. Go ahead, Jude. Oh, our Jim's going to present.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of council. I'm just going to introduce the subject matter here. 2 seconds of background because of our time limitations, and turn it over to Judy. She's got a presentation first. I want to welcome Trent West, the fire chief of the town of Strathmore, whom we worked with, Judy particularly here, and appreciate his way of doing business with us. Mr. Chairman, the resolution is the council approves entering into the attached fire services mutual aid agreement between Wheatland County and the town of Strathmore. And Mr. Chairman, just to recognize the work that's gone on since November 5th, 2014, when the town had approved the conclusion of their participation in the fire disaster mutual aid agreement. Staff have worked hard and negotiated this agreement, Mr. Chairman, that is attached and that we will be discussing here today, that reflects the desire of each of the municipality and the two fire departments to provide mutual aid to the other at no cost, and to begin training and responding together. Resolution 150113, Council showed their leadership at that time, Mr. Chairman, by saying that we're going to continue to provide the services in mutual aid to the town, but it's under the existing agreement that we had entered into. Resolution 150466, Council directed through administration that the General Manager, Agriculture Community Protective Services and the Fire and Emergency Management Coordinator work with the town of Strathmore to negotiate a workable mutual aid agreement. So in conclusion on my end, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank the CAO and thank Council for your trust and faith in us that we could do this on your behalf. And I'm going to turn it over to Julie to review the agreement for you.
Honorable Reeve, Council. Just have to log in here. It's a big PowerPoint. I think there's 6 slides. Bless you. It's just thinking. I am so pleased and excited and proud to be standing here before you today with this mutual aid agreement. It has been a year and a half of very hard work. As Council is well aware, with their directive, they asked us to go back to the table again, and we did. I'm so proud to have worked with Trent West on this agreement. He's the reason I'm in the fire service. He was the chief that appointed me as chief as a volunteer chief. So I knew as soon as he came forward as an interim fire chief for the town of Strathmore that we could do great things. And I think as I walk through some of the highlights, and this is the 5,000-foot view, it's not actually getting into the details of the document. I want to point out some really neat things that we've done. I think together he and I, and he's here to stand beside me, can achieve amazing things. So the first part is just a bit of history. In 2014, in August, we established the Wheatland County Fire Services Department, as Council well remembers. We were still receiving good mutual aid from the town of Strathmore. They filled in for us when we couldn't do it ourselves, and they came with us when we needed help. So of the 129 calls that we did in 2014, Strathmore, the town, helped us with 7% of those calls, which is considerable help. We helped them, in turn, with 1% of their calls. In 2015, as a mutual aid department, the town of Strathmore helped us with 3% of our 120 calls, and we helped them with 1% of their calls. So either we came with each other or we stood by and provided response in their absence. In 2016, we started to see a bit of a change. We rebranded Strathmore Rural to Wheatland West, so we stood on our own as our own department. The town of Strathmore, as a mutual aid department, helped us with 3 fire calls, and one of those calls, Council remembers, they actually ran for us because we were already involved in another structure fire that day. Wheatland West provided help to them with 5 of their calls. So we see the trend starting to change. Initially it was 70-30, then it was about 60-40, and now it's 40-60. So what did we prove to ourselves? We proved that we really can't accomplish anything without working together. You know, through the years that I've been here, the vast 3 years, I've learned that we need each other, and we have to figure out how to make that work. So that's what Trent and I did, Jim and Alan as well. So some of the things I want to bring your attention to, if you have the mutual aid agreement in front of you on page 2, we have some unique words. And the first is to provide assistance. So how are we going to go about supporting each other in this agreement? We're going to provide fire and suppression services and personnel and materials and equipment to help each other. For a full response, what that means is that the responding party is going to deploy its members and the equipment immediately to provide assistance to the requesting party. Seems pretty simple to me, right? I need help, will you come and help me? Sure. Mutual aid. Both parties will be responsible for the best efforts to provide assistance to the responding party for major events at no cost. Standby response. What that means is the responding party will coordinate its available members and equipment to stand by at the fire hall. So we're not sure if it's really big, but we may need you, so please be ready. So these are the things that we talk about in the mutual aid agreement. And then I included the definition of teamwork from the dictionary, which is a cooperative or combined effort of a group of persons working together as a team for a common course and cause. And that's what Chief West and I are trying to do. So how are we going to help each other? Where's that going to occur? So there are a couple of things, point 7 and point 8 in your mutual aid agreement. Talk about the response. So if we're busy or they're busy, we have the right to refuse that. We're already involved in another call. So we can refuse if necessary. We can give them everything. We can give them some things and vice versa. As long as we notify dispatch that, you know, you've asked for all of this, but we're only going to include this. So they can order resources or we can order resources if the full resource isn't available. We're not going to claim damages against each other for a full, partial, or failure to respond at all, because sometimes we're involved in other things and they will be as well. 8 talks about fees and cost recovery. And I think this is probably one of the most exciting parts of this document. When we started 2 years ago, there was a heavy fee that we were going to pay them, and council had been clear to me that we wanted to charge them nothing. So we were on a scale of 1 to 10, as far apart as you can get. Today, I'm so proud to stand before you to say that we've negotiated a no-fee agreement. We understand that we need each other, and our members have proven it to us time and again. They work well together, and they're happy to do so. So some of the points council should be aware of is that in the event of a joint response by both parties on a primary, secondary highway, so Highway 1 in particular should come to mind for council, we're going to each invoice Alberta Transportation. We're not going to charge each other. So we're going to have the appropriate resources to manage the calls as we need when we need it, which is a turnaround in how we were thinking. So the requesting party will compensate the responding party for any consumables. So if the town of Strathmore comes and uses all their foam, we'll get them their foam and vice versa. And the last is that the Schedule A fees, which is included as the last page of the mutual aid agreement, it's just for consumables only. And so I think that's a major achievement and a win on everybody's part. So what does the future look like with this mutual aid agreement? Where are we going to go from here? Because we're type A personalities and we don't really deal in the day-to-day stuff. We're thinking ahead. And so what we're going to do is a customer first focus. For the first time, we're going to put the customers first. And as council may or may not remember at a previous presentation, Fire Today talks about the people we respond to as being our customers. So they're going to be first in Wheatland County and in Strathmore. So some of the highlights of that are a joint highway response. So the town of Strathmore is going to send a rescue and an engine if we need it, and we're going to send an engine and a traffic unit. So we're going to start going to calls together on Highway 1 to manage that nightmare properly, and no one's paying for it. We're each going to provide personnel and apparatus to do that. We're going to provide mutual aid for each other on any MVC if we want, because it's available at no cost. So if a big incident happens in the town of Strathmore, like last year, right in front of Walmart, they called us and we provided help, and vice versa. We're going to do a joint response into the town of Strathmore. So when Chief West presents this to his council tomorrow night, he's going to talk about the fact that in any structure fire, automatically our people are going with him. So the town of Strathmore and Wheatland West will be responding to any structure fire in the town of Strathmore. It's the right thing to do, and it ensures their customers' safety first. We're going to joint train together. Our guys are actually so excited about it, they've started doing it. So they're back and forth between each other's halls. Today, one of my officers went to the town of Strathmore Hall and picked up some high-vol hose, which I'll mention as another point here, high-volume hose for our truck, so that we can actually go into the town of Strathmore. We're going to share personnel between the stations, between Wheatland West and Carsland and Strathmore. So they're going to start sharing some expertise. The town of Strathmore brings some really strong things to the table, as does Wheatland West. So we're going to start sharing that resource. We're going to start sharing information and technology. We're going to share equipment. For example, today's exchange of the town of Strathmore giving us high volume hose so that we can hook up to their hydrants to help them. And last thing, this was small, but I think it's great. We're going to fill up our apparatus with water at the town of Strathmore without charge. So we're going to use their hydrants, and we're going to practice using them. That's it. We know that our resource is scarce with volunteers, and we think it's time to start using them wisely. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Ben?
Yeah, I read through the whole thing and I think it's great. It's only taken us 20 years to get where we were 25 years ago. So that's good. My question is, we've got 7, 8 other departments out there with a mutual aid agreement. Are we going to tie these two agreements together so that, because there will be times when they get called into the same area, they should be working under the same agreement similarly? So I love the idea and I love what you've done, but I think you need to move it one step further and just revisit what we have out there with the other departments. So thank you very much for.
Through the chair, if I can. It's an excellent question and one that Jim and I wrestled around with for a very long time, and I mean months. We did a ton of homework, and on point 3, it says, whereas per Wheatland County Rural Fire Association's Joint Fire Service Agreement, fire associations may be called outside of the boundaries of their fire service area to such calls that fall under mutual aid. So this will apply to every department in Wheatland County.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
Ask more. So on that, our other agreement by association is in effect with this one, is what you're saying?
Through the chair, if I might. Could you say that again, Councillor Knight? I'm not sure I understood.
Sorry, our other mutual aid agreement that we have between all our parties out in the county, essentially by that line, that is the connection between this contract and that contract. It's just by that single line. We don't need to mention it throughout.
Through the chair. What covers the mutual aid for this is the Joint Fire Services Agreement, which allows us to engage in mutual aid agreements on behalf of the whole municipality. So as the Joint Fire Service Agreement goes to the wayside and the new Fire Service Master Agreement takes place, we have specific verbiage in there to address this as well.
Okay,
So the mutual aid agreement that you're speaking to, the Fire/Disaster Mutual Aid Agreement, is specific to our own departments in Wheatland County and allows them to provide mutual aid to each other at no cost. So we needed a different venue to drive this, and that was the Joint Fire Service Agreement, which has verbiage in it that allows us to make mutual aid agreements on behalf of the municipality.
Okay. Any other questions? Ben?
No question. I'll move the recommendation and thank you very much for getting that in place. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried.
And thank you for participating finally. Not you yourself, but
Yeah, thank you.
very good.
What I got? Okay, request for development. Okay, council. Next on the agenda is 2.3G. Okay. I can do other stuff till 2, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm back and forth here. When I did my report, I forgot to do the ambulance. And just so you know, we to date have 1,156 calls. It's a 1.8% increase over last year. And there's a package here of our audited financial statements. March 31st, 2016. Just got them done. So just pass that down to Margaret, please. Okay. And Division 1 Councillor report.
Is it, or we haven't done the deputy?
Oh, Deputy Reeves.
Yeah.
Geez, I don't know what's wrong today.
I missed that too, actually,
I
today.
fall into that all the time. I didn't get it in time to get it on your server, but I do have you did get a printed copy.
Okay.
So, I did forget that. So you have a printed copy. I didn't get it in time for Margaret to put it on the server, but you do have a printed copy. The annual meeting for the Drumheller Solid Waste and the Dallam Fire Department, their statements or their financials will be sent in according to the process, whatever. And I do have one addition that I forgot to write in there, and I'll just read it out. That I attended a community meeting in Hazard that they've been having for the last 15, 16 years, where all of the community groups, and there was 20 of them, get together and talk about the projects that they have, the funding they're getting, where it's coming, where it's going. And they usually work on one or two community activities together, and they pool their resources to make it happen. They've, at that meeting the other night, they agreed on one community project that we'll all participate in, and it's a central theme for the community, and it will be revealed at a later date. I'm not at liberty to reveal it right now. They're still looking into some legalities around it, but they do a hell of a job. They started this 4 years before the new arena was built, and everybody went together and made that thing happen because of that. And they've kept that whole process going, and it works fantastic. Everybody knows what it, down to the little guys that are playing ball, the Duck Lake Hall, every organization out there gets together and discusses what they're doing, and then they don't step on each other's toes when there's dates, and it works fantastic. So if there's any questions on my report, I will answer them. Otherwise, I'd move it.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Now, Alice, it's your turn.
My turn?
Yes.
Thank you. The last, I'll start off with the Roy Clark situation, because that was from last meeting. Ben got an email, and he forwarded to me and some of the other council. So I contacted Jim, he was acting CAO, and we set up a meeting with Dave Churchill, Tommy, and the road crew foreman, and myself with Roy and his son, out on the job to go over, because the bill had come to us and we voted on not to pay for the water or the rock bill that he sent in. And I was under the impression at the time that they went out and picked rock in the ditch and the back slopes. Well, anyway, that was not the information that came forward when we actually went and met. What happened is they felt some of the rocks that was on the old road allowance before they started to build was pushed off onto the Clark's property out of the way so that they could get building the road. So there was discussion around that. We also got a letter given to me from Robert Philco-Hazy, and he had the Clarks and the grandsons pick the rocks off of his property, and those rocks ended up in his pea farm, crop. So obviously the crop was sowed, the rocks got into the crop while they were working, and that was part of the issue. So those rocks were picked by Roy's son and grandkids. So he felt that with the discussion, he felt that he wanted the rocks paid for by the county, because it wasn't something that they went and just picked them off the road allowance. It was rocks that was pushed onto his property while they were building road. The water, they didn't have any agreement. Roy is used to making agreements with oil companies by saying, yeah, you can get water and use my road, and I'm just charging you for road use. He doesn't charge for the water, it's road use. And oil companies understand that. But in this case, he did talk to the foreman, and there was no agreement to pay for water between the two parties. So there was no meeting of the minds on the job site. Roy did say he wanted to help out the county because the road crew was there, they were ready to go, they had to have water. There was no water in the canal at the time for the county to go and get water to use for compaction. And he felt he was helping out the county by saying, you use my road, you can go and get water. And he said, well, he really didn't care if we didn't pay for that, but he certainly wanted us to pay for the rocks. So it's coming back, it would come back to council to decide whether they were going to pay for water and the rock bill or the rocks. So I said I'd bring that information back. There was a letter put on the server that came from Mr. Philco Hazy, talking about the rocks on his property and that the CAM had picked them. So it's up to council, I guess, to revisit that, the bills for the Clarks. So do you want to go ahead and finish that one before I go on with the rest of the report?
Rex has a question first.
Let's just do, which agenda date is that? Because maybe you can pull it up, just so I have that information back in front of me. Right, but I'd just like to look at the
The bill.
information, well, the information, yeah, they
Yep.
came through on the, that council meeting, which was at the last council meeting?
April?
The first council meeting? April 4th?
In the minutes.
April 18th? Thank you. So go ahead.
While he's looking for that, did Roy give you a breakdown on that bill?
No, I didn't receive any bill from Roy at all, just the letter. I believe he sent the bill to Alan.
Oh, is the breakdown on the bill? I can't remember when I looked at the bill, was there a breakdown on there of the rocks and the water?
I believe there were two different bills, by what he told me. Is that right, Alan? There was two bills?
I wasn't at that meeting on the 18th, so
Yeah, I can't
Is it
remember.
on?
I'll pull it up.
Rex has got it?
Yeah. And on our discussion when we were out there, I asked Mr. Clark if that ever happens again, make sure he always gets something in writing, and I believe Dave had talked to the road crew and the same thing as when you talk about these things, and this is a new age, the county has to have things done in writing to make sure that they talk to the ratepayer and send them to the proper people to get an agreement done up so this kind of thing doesn't happen again. So that was a good part of the meeting.
Loaded? Yeah, but it's at the last meeting, was it not?
It was a meeting that Glenn wasn't at, that meeting.
That was the 18th.
Yeah.
In the afternoon, it was council.
Were you saying it was handed out? I'd have
It
to-
was a rate, was it in information or was it in bill? It could have been under.
I never seen a bill, so.
Yeah, there was a bill on our server. Something, but I can't remember if it was a breakdown of rock or water.
So
If it was a handout, I'd have it.
item 2.2B.
I'm pulling it.
There should be a bill.
Well, maybe, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we could do that.
For
Okay,
me, if there was going to be a motion coming, I wanted to see the bill that was there, so that's
Right.
why I was asking.
Through the chair, while we're on it, have you got the bill in front of you? What's the breakdown between water? Because Roy has said The water's fine, all he's interested in is the rocks. Then it's dealt with.
And I told him I'd take both of it back to council and the council would make a decision on it. So what was the bill?
It just says a request, but it didn't, it
Yeah, that's what I said. We don't have a bill.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not seeing a bill. I'm just seeing in the RFD the information attached under the key issues, concepts defined.
There was
Oh,
no
hold
bill.
on, the landowner has also submitted invoice for rock picking in July of 2016 in the amount of 900 and,
Keep
$80.
going, I think at the end of that, you'll find a bill, at the end of that request.
at the end of that request.
Yeah, go, just like most
So
of them.
rock picking for $980, it's halfway down the thing.
Does it goes right to 2.2C.
No, there was no bill. That's what I said.
But in there it
It
says,
says $980. It does for the rock picking.
see, it says the landowner has also submitted an invoice for rock picking. Here, I'll do it on mic, so that it's done. The landowner has also submitted an invoice for rock picking in July 2016 in the amount of $980. No communication or expression of concern was received from the landowner to have the rocks removed quicker. So that's the actual rock amount, but it says the final is an invoice for access to water. Let's read it. Here, I'll start from the beginning. Existing Public Works Policy 9.51 sets out the compensation staff are authorized to pay for disturbance of cross losses due to road construction activity. A landowner affected by the road construction done in 2016 on Township Road 230 has submitted 2 invoices for compensation for items not covered by the policy. The first is an invoice for access to water on their private lands in the amount of $1,000. When construction started in April 2016, water wasn't available through the irrigation canals, yet Wheatland County obtains an annual permit for this purpose. And the landowner, knowing it would mean water, would have to have hauled it from quite a distance. Approached the construction staff and offered to let them take the water from the water source on his lands with access across the pasture on the established private trail. There was no request from the landowner nor discussion of compensation for access at that time. Water was flowing in the canal approximately 2 weeks later, and no further access to the water on the private lands was required. The county does not typically compensate landowners for access to water and had an option of supplying water from the Gleason Bulk Water Station in this instance. The landowner has also submitted an invoice for rock picking in July of 2016 in the amount of $980. No communication or expression of concern was received from the landowner to have the rocks removed quicker. The land alongside this project is quite rocky, and staff hauled rocks from this project for several weeks. The construction crew had not completed the rock picking and cleanup in the area when the landowner took upon themselves to remove excess rocks from the construction process. The county was not notified that the landowner's concerns regarding the rocks on their request to have them removed sooner. That's it.
I'll address there was some big piles of dirt, and they were concerned they couldn't use their land this year. We looked at that, and it's to do with burying a power cable. So until the power company comes out, all the dirt work has been done and moved from the area, so it's down to, it's probably a cut of 12 feet or so. The power company's had an issue. They've supposed to have been out there at least on 4 occasions. Crews have arrived and crews have quit. And so anyway, Tommy had contacted Tommy and the foreman, I think, was both involved. And they're working towards getting that done. And then they'll have to take earth movers or hose back in to replace that. So that's going to be looked after. There is some other rock picking to do between the back slope and the temporary fence on one piece. There's a few rocks in the ditches that had not got picked. The crew's going to be looking after all that. So when we left the meeting, Roy was quite satisfied with the discussion on the power cable, and that he understands that that won't be finished until the power company does the burial of the cable. So I think that all in all, everything's been discussed, and the county crews are going to be looking after everything there.
So, with the information at hand and the discussion with the landowner and the additional letter from the Philco Hazies, I'll move that we pay the $980 for the rock work, for picking rocks that were left on site.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried.
And I would like to thank Ben for sending me a note, and one of the gentlemen was kind of irate, and I think Ben, having a chat with him helped out, and so thank you for that, Ben. I didn't have to deal with that part. And the other part of my report is the Economic Development Board has met a few times and is moving forward and working on policies and attainable housing. So it's moving forward. I think we're going to have some things come in front of council. That's probably next month from the board. So you can wait, and you'll get that next month, I believe. The handy bus hasn't had anything exciting going on, so it's business as usual in there. And I also went to a Wild Rose Futures meeting last month because Councillor Knight couldn't attend. So I did go to that meeting, and it was good to be back and see all the group that I'd been working with over the years. Nothing exciting, except we are working towards bringing in a new manager because Ron is going to be retiring. So we're phasing him out and phasing the new guy in. So that's in process right now. So that's my report. So I'll move my report.
Clooney transfer.
Pardon?
You mentioned the Clooney transfer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been getting calls the last couple of days. I did talk to Alan about it, and apparently there's a sign on the gate saying, contact your counselor, and it indicates, I'm not sure what's on it because I haven't seen the sign, but people are understanding that Wheatland County is going to close the transfer site, and of course that's getting people kind of excited. So I contacted Alan, and Alan was going to look in to find out, I guess, just what's going on.
So Dave and Michael will speak to that on Dave's report.
Okay.
So we'll do it on Dave's? Okay, good. And my land, my gravel and stuff, I can talk when Dave's here.
Okay.
Okay.
Any questions for Alice? All in favor of her report? Carried. Division 2.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Our big thing lately has just really been how are we doing on financial and on progress. So is the finances meeting the progress of the work that's being done? I think we've come up a little bit higher on our engineering, but overall the expenses have been within check as far as timing goes. Some of the construction is, I believe the pipeline is ahead of schedule. There's some extra work that we got to do at Gleason that's part of our work and part of the county's work to tie in. There's some work down at the pump station that we have to do. Some of that stuff we were told was behind because there was still frost in the ground longer than they expected. It was or it wasn't. Baja has assured us he's trying to keep them in check, and they were going to start putting in extra hours to try and catch up on the time. So far that's really all. That's just been our main focus, is just to keep those two checks and balances together. That's my main concern, is that they match. Is there a question there coming?
Alice?
Not on your report so much as when a ratepayer wants water, Rex is the best thing to send them to talk to Baja?
Yeah,
correctly?
absolutely. Everything goes through Baja. So are you talking a rural user?
There's yes, a rural user, and his question was, I guess he has to cross somebody else's land to get to his house from, it's just south of the school.
Yeah.
And whether or not the water corporation gets easement for the farmer, or does the farmer have to get the easement? So I told him, I thought the best thing was send him to Baja, and he could answer that,
Do you
maybe?
know if they've done that? As long as that's where they need to go. I mean, I could speculate, but I'm not going to make a statement in council about it. But he would have to call Baja for sure.
Yeah, that's why I sent him to Rocky for the town office to
Yeah,
phone there.
that's how to get a hold of him. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
That's good.
Any other questions?
I'll move my report.
All in favor? Carried. Division 3 Councillor report. Not much.
And then at the new Calder on the campground, and we'll be redeveloping. Okay, the Calderon Campground has been taken over by a new outfit, and they're completely redeveloping it. It's almost going to be like street and avenue type things. Before, when previous owners had it, it was more or less just a party place. And it was run down on a lot, and he's cleaned up a lot of old abandoned trailers that people were just coming out using them on weekend to party in them, you know. And like I say, it's going to be street and avenues. He's going to be increasing the size of it. It's going to be a fair fancy campground. The only concern I got is it's going to be a year-round one. And are we going to have residents living there year-round? This is something that hasn't been established yet. Yeah, Speargrass has been having a few problems, as we know, with their campground there, down there, and their trailer camps, I should say, and their security. But I think they've got it under control.
You have the Ag Service minutes on?
No, I haven't.
It's on the, it's under your report on the agenda.
Yeah. I just got it across my legs. That's a big job with my birthday.
What?
Oh, I haven't got that here. No. That's the one you did.
It is. We were all there. Does anybody want me to speak to the Ag Service Board? Do you have anything to add, Don?
No.
I think it's just because you're technically still the chair, right? So it comes as your report, but I'll let you.
Okay. I'll technically move my report.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Staff report, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report is attached. I just have one addition. We had a meeting yesterday with myself and Dave Churchill with Ember Resources, and Ember Resources will be doing some drilling activity in Division 5 and Division 6 this summer and fall. And at this point, we don't have the list of locations. We should have that by the end of the week. And also, I don't have it on here, but Friday I have a personal matter that I need to take care of, so I won't be here Friday. But other than that, my report's attached if there's any questions.
Is there any questions for Alan? The CAO. Council's wishes.
Also move his report.
Rex is moved. All in favor? Carried. Corporate and Financial Services report. We got our financial person standing at the podium. He's ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my report is attached to the council agenda. It starts on page 485. To note that we sent out the combined assessment and tax notices on May 1st. They were in the mail, as the mailing date indicates on all the notices. As for a financial update, we're still continuing our project on Diamond Municipal Solutions. We're approximately 90% done the project. In the month of April, we transitioned our general ledger history over. So that's 4 years of transactional history over from our legacy system into Diamond. So that went very well. There's not really too much other pieces to report on that. Also, we've completed an update on the financial services systems review that was completed last year. So attached to the report is just the independent report findings and the action that has been taken by staff. So just take a look through that if you'd like.
Any questions? Brenda?
So earlier we had spoke about the payroll review, and they were doing a financial audit. Where does that stand, and what were the results of the payroll audit? And I guess whether the payroll has been, I guess I have some issues with the T4s coming out twice. And so I'd like to know what that issue was and how it happened, I guess.
Sure. So I had emailed Colin Mitchell today, and he had mentioned that they're just in the final steps of reviewing it. So that was the answer that he gave me, maybe around 12 o'clock. So as for the T4s, there was one error that was made. An additional benefit that was added into box 40, which was not a taxable benefit. So after review, we found that error and we just took it off and sent out amended T4s maybe a week or two after that they were originally sent out. It was an administrative error that we had made.
And have we filled the position on payroll and it's back to working up to speed, or?
So we're still in the process of reviewing the resumes. We have an interview on Thursday, and hopefully at that point we'll have a decision.
And the payroll audit should be finished then by the next meeting then?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so, thank you.
Alice?
You talk here about timesheets manual versus electronic. And that's what, just for staff? Are you talking, and is that working, or what was the issue?
Yes, so in the legacy system, what was happening is that we had a process of using Excel timesheets, paper timesheets, and those timesheets would be faxed into our payroll department and another department to help as well. Mm-hmm. So that was a very, very cumbersome process that maybe involved 3 to 4 staff that would take 3 to 4 days. At the moment now, the new system that we have in place has electronic timesheets. So individual staffs have logins, login and a password to go in, and they can view any pay stub they've had, any time bank balances, and they enter in their own time. So that time gets submitted to the managers approve it, and then at that point it's already in the system, so it's not being duplicated. And sometimes 3 times that happened in the legacy system. So then at that point it gets transferred into our accounting system, and then that produces a file which we send to our financial institution, and then that kind of generates the direct deposit.
So on the road crew, are they able to, on the electronic timesheets, put in what they're doing, what road project they're on, and what equipment they're operating, so that we can keep track of the costs of roads?
So with that, there is a section of it, but we are in contact with the foreman of those projects, and we're kind of keeping a tally of the employees, what units they're using, so we can capitalize those costs for road projects.
Okay.
It's kind of a different method than that has been used in the past, but an effective one as well.
Yeah, I know when we had the conversation with Mr. Clark on road sites, they talked about so many rocks and how tough the job was, and I suggested they take photos. A lot of times, you know, it's he said, she said, so sometimes when they run into a road project and you have something like excessive amount of rocks, or you're not sure whose land they are on, just take pictures. And is that able to be sent in, so from the field, like, or I think the one young fellow said something about he had a computer now to make notes, keep track and, you know, of issues on the jobs. So they can report, write it down, what's happened, and then it doesn't come back where people have to remember what's said. So there was notes made about a job. So how do they get that to whoever report to? It'd be either Tommy or the foreman or Dave or?
So I'm kind of thinking that's more of an operational thing that maybe Dave, Austin, and Tom could talk about. There is a section on the timesheets that they can add in notes.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily sure if that would be a section where they would add a note, that kind of a note.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
kind
they
of
could.
They
Yeah.
definitely could. So that's one option.
Okay.
I'm thinking that may not be the most effective option,
yeah.
but they definitely could. The issue with putting it on the timesheet is that timesheet's only viewable to the manager and the employee. So
Right.
it wouldn't be,
And it gets filed on the payroll. It doesn't go to the manager, so he would not see what happened on the job site. And it was just you run into some issues on different jobs that if it was documented, we wouldn't maybe have to do what I just finished doing with the Clarks, because then it would be there and it'd be recorded so that staff could go back and see what the issue was at the time.
I could
Just an
definitely.
idea.
Yeah, I could definitely speak to Dave about that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I just have one. So, first back to payroll, because, Margaret checks our payroll, sends it back, and that's okay. So she said that I don't have to put my cell phone in manually because it's automated now. So can you explain how that rolls over and what happened to it? Because on my pay sheet, when Margaret sends it back to me, I show no charge for a phone, and yet it's supposed to be automatically entered. So, but I don't see it on my pay sheet, and I don't see the reflection of it. So could you, Margaret and I were trying to figure it out, and so could you explain that to me, please?
Yes, so the taxable benefit for that phone would come under 5 cell. It would be on your pay stub. I could show that kind of section to you of your pay stub, or I could get Alan to show it to you as well.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because when you do post your timesheet up to the public to show, it might be the dollar figure, but it doesn't show what it's for on our timesheet. So I guess my question is I would like to reflect that that $100 goes towards our cell phone, and it should reflect on our timesheets as such.
So one thing we've done is that we automatically add that. We can definitely put it on the timesheet available for public viewing as well, if that's a step you'd like to take.
Well, otherwise it shows that for some reason we're making an extra $100. Like, it should be allocated out, especially because now our timesheets, unlike staff's, are subject to public scrutiny. So I think that if we're charging for $100 for our cell phones and use, it should be recorded on our timesheets. So I don't think that we should be changing that to show, because it just shows that we're each getting $100 extra if it's not allocated out to something.
I'm just going through my time sheets, all my expense ones.
Yeah, but not with mine. Like, I put it in $100 and I put my timesheet in, and Margaret sent it back with me taken off because it was automated. So
Yes.
here's the problem. What lies the problem is I don't show it, even though I get the $100 for it, it's not showing on my timesheet as what the expense is for. I got the right program on my computer. It was what you sent me. And what Margaret, I've asked, this is the first time this has ever come up.
Okay.
Last month, it shows. This month, it's not. So I guess my question is to you.
Sure, we can bring that back next meeting, and I can come up with a method to show that council is receiving that $100 allowance for a cell phone.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it's not,
absolutely.
it's okay, I get paid for it, but it needs to be reflective on the pay stub, or the paid timesheet.
Absolutely. My thought is that those timesheets are not, or the pay stubs are not public
Right.
viewing, and that's kind of where it's showing. Okay, so I can definitely fix that.
Thank you. Yep.
learning curve for them as well as at the county here. But they mentioned a $10,000 fee or something they're not 100% sure of, or they'll
Was that
probably be
was,
getting a hold of you.
was that a fee from us or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and that could have been the only charges that we would charge them are insurance as an ANI or accounting fees. So if there's any questions, they can definitely
Yeah,
contact
they
us.
probably will be.
Okay.
I thought I'd mention it, how after all these years, we're getting there, yeah.
And I had talked to Donna as well, and she said that she's very pleased with how things are going over there, and she really enjoys the control over it.
Okay, motion for the report. Ben, all in favor? Carried. Request for decision, addition of corporate name. Are they all ready? Okay. You'll have to come back.
Sure. Well, come back up there.
I wonder, I lose track. I'm jumping all over the. Okay, request for decision, Wheatland County Master Schedule of Fees, the 2 o'clock.
And that was the one that I
2.3
requested
C.
to be moved to a committee of the whole so that we could have time with planning to discuss. So
You're making a motion to move this to,
yes, I'd like to make a motion that we move it to a committee of a whole so that we can have a good discussion with planning on the cost of fees, as well as I've got a number of different other counties and fees, and there's quite a big discrepancy. Doesn't mean we have to follow everybody else, but there's a lot of questions about costs of doing business in the county from developers and from farmers and ratepayers that feel that the fees are out of whack. So I think it deserves a really good conversation, like we did with the land use bylaw. I really felt that that was informative, and it was good for both council as well as staff to be able to sit and talk about things and discuss it. So I'd like to make that motion.
what would you require from staff to prepare for this meeting?
Well, I think I'll take a little something that I did for a on the application I had for buying an acre of land to put on my acreage. And I got 2 charges, $450 for the application and $450 for one piece of paper with 2 lines saying the MPC had approved it. And I paid my lawyer $275 to do the job. And my question is, $450 was a lot of money for a couple of lines on a piece of paper. So I think we're not really looking at what is it costing to do that? And staff is paid by taxpayers' money in planning, right? So
what are you asking
why
for
the
staff,
double
though?
cost?
Why, yeah, what are you asking from staff? You just want time to
Well,
go
I
through it
think,
line by line?
yeah, I think
Okay,
so.
that's fine then.
And for staff to say, this is the time we spend, so that it gives us a better idea. I can criticize somebody, but I need to understand what they do to get to.
So how about staff should be ready to verify the time spent on different apps? They're ready today. Okay. Okay,
So I made a motion to move it to a committee of the whole.
So what are we going to do for the rest of the day?
Mr. Chairman, there is, the document is marked up with color coding. It shows any new changes.
I'm looking at it, yeah.
So I put it back up on the screen or whatever you want to do. Staff are ready here to speak to whatever questions there is.
Unless we want to finish.
We don't have much left. Okay, any other questions? I'm seeing that we got staff here. I'm willing to go for it. Is there any other questions or? That's right. Any other questions? All in favor of Alice's motion? Opposed? Opposed? That's, motion is lost. We'll continue with 2 o'clock, master schedule of fees. Yep. Don voted against. I seen Don vote against.
Motion to have a break.
2 minutes, starting in 2 minutes. Okay, any questions? Alice?
Me being the loudest here.
Sorry, this is the only one I hadn't marked the page on. But yeah.
Page 458.
458.
Do you want to go page by page, or?
If you got a question, ask up.
This doesn't have a number on it, but it was public hearing. So if you recess the public hearing, it's at 25% of which fee? It depends on what the, what's in front of the public hearing. Is that how that works?
I'm sorry, which
It's on the second page.
on the second page?
Second page, about a third down. It's under department, no, hold on. It just says, request to recess a public hearing, 25% of the application fee. So that goes back to 25% of whatever the application fee is, because they're not all the same, right? Yeah, maybe Gary can tell me.
Good afternoon, Council. Now, just for the record, we were coming prepared to speak to the proposed changes we have in yellow. Some of the changes I think you might be asking, as I understand it from your brief
Well-
comments, are tied to fees that are already in place that were passed in 2015. So if I take a little bit of time to get up to speed on those, because I
No,
didn't
that's
come
okay.
fully prepared on what we did back then.
No, that's okay. There's just, I would like to go through some, and some's in yellow and some aren't. Okay?
Yes, and the yellow, as I understand it, is the proposed changes. You will see some in green as well, which are additionally proposed changes, which came to be as a result of the land use bylaw this morning. So when this first came through, we didn't have a set date for the third and final reading of the land use bylaw. So in yellow represents changes that are a result of what has occurred since 2015 when we first had this fee schedule put into play. And so what you see in green is a result of what happened this morning with the new land use bylaw. Obviously, additional fees had to be put into play. So coming back to the question with regards to the 25% of the application fee, where are we at here again, sorry. Request to recess a public hearing, 25% of the application fee. So in order to do a public hearing, you're applying for a redesignation application. So it is 25% of whatever that reapplication or redesignation fee was.
See what's,
Yes.
okay. And then if you move down there in the yellow, you can go down to agricultural residential, $1,000. That's under yellow, so that's done because of the new land use by law, you're saying? Yep, right there.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Who's got the laser? Okay, thank you. No, those fees haven't changed. So those fees for both the 1,000, 1,250, and the 1,500 haven't changed. The only thing that has changed was some textual refinements. In the current fee schedule, we have agricultural, residential, single lot. And then under the 1,250, we had recreational, institutional, multi-lot. There really is no difference between a single lot residential or a multi-lot residential redesignation. They're essentially the same thing, requires the same amount of time if that comes into play. So we just remove that completely, and it's a residential redesignation is residential, whether it's for one lot or multiple lots. So just clarifying basically the fees is what used to be $1,250 for a multi-lot is in fact going to revert to $1,000. That was the only change done with those set of lines.
Okay, and then down, what I was talking about, boundary adjustment, 450 is to fill out the form. And then another 400, it says 25, but I know I paid 450 for 2 lines on a piece of paper to say that it went through MPC and it was approved. I find that just a little bit on the expensive side. It cost me $275 to hire a lawyer to do all the land legal work. So my argument here is we pay staff by taxpayers' money, and then we're charging this fee over and above. So why, to me, the planning staff is there to plan and do this work. So why are we charging that type of fee?
When we worked on through the chair, when we worked on the fee schedule back in 2014, which ultimately became the 2015 resolution, we were under the direction that we weren't basing our fees on trying to recoup costs for labor or time. That was not something to have as a consideration. So when we were doing the fees, even to this day, we don't take into account what actually staff time is. I would respectfully suggest that those fees would be considerably higher if we factored in how much time applications take in some cases. So just for that respect, we don't take in staff time on this one.
So
we do look at comparable municipalities with regards to that. Now, the question with regards to why do we have a subdivision application fee and then a subdivision endorsement fee, they're treated as 2 separate things.
Yeah.
Is you have that application fee, which is just that. You
Yeah.
apply for the subdivision application. Now, you may not get your subdivision application. Some municipalities collect the endorsement fee on the back end, some collect it on the front end with the subdivision application fee. Every municipality has their own way of doing it. We had historically and continue to do so where we keep the subdivision application fee separate of the back end fee. The background for why there's an endorsement fee on a subdivision, I can't give you an answer for that. All municipalities, or majority of them, have it set up that there's an endorsement fee on the back end that they charge for the processing of dealing with all the conditions, meeting them, preparing any agreements that may need to be required, and having all the sign-off done in order to go to land titles. So I imagine at some point, municipalities across the province who are saying, okay, there's a time and energy put into that,
Yeah.
therefore it's a separate fee.
So my question is who come up with, if it isn't on time spent, and that was what I understood some of these fees was because it was costing the county more than we should, somehow recoup staff time. That's the way I understood this subject came up. So if we're not recuperating staff time, then how do we set a fee that is reasonable for our taxpayers? Because no matter where we look at it, we pay the staff from taxpayers' money, and then we put another fee on top of that. How do we justify that to the ratepayer? That's where I'm getting at it. It's not about, why are we asking for that? What is it? What are we hanging our hat on here? We're charging a big fee. If it isn't to recoup time, then what is it for?
Well, and that's probably a question for senior administration or council, not to be flippant. But when we did look at this, we did try to figure out, are we doing it based on a recouping of time?
Yeah.
Or are we doing it based on comparables in other municipalities, and where are we at with, say, 2014 at the time is when we started looking at these numbers again. And typically municipalities will do these on an annual basis. In our case, when we realized it wasn't based on an hourly component or to recoup all of staff time, we basically looked at other municipalities and said, okay, how are we faring, how are we comparable to? So that's what a lot of our calculations were done back in 2014, 2015, as well as today, is what are the other municipalities doing? Are we in the same ballpark?
Yeah.
And then ultimately, it's up to council to decide if they want to be in that ballpark, or you want to be less or more than the rest of the similar
And-
municipalities.
And I've been looking at Newell and Vulcan, and I don't see those kind of charges. And that, you're right, I think back when we had this conversation, we did talk about, you know, what is other municipalities charging, and, you know, if we're in that kind of a ballpark. But I see our fees are, ooh, there's one or two places they're about the same, but most of the time they're more and Brenda she's been looking at it as well as I have. And I was really, when I did my boundary adjustment, I was quite shocked. And I've been getting people telling me this, but until it hit me, I listened, but I never really paid attention, right? And so then when I did it, I thought, oh, you know, that's $900. And I did the work, mind you. I come in, spent time with you, right? And we must have spent a couple hours. So I kind of thought, okay, is it on hourly? You know, the first fee of when I filled out the form. And then I tried to justify the next cost, $450 for two sentences on a piece of paper saying, you're successful and now I can take that and register the land. So then when it hit me in the pocketbook, I'm starting to look at it and say, what's that $450 for?
Yeah.
Right? So I think we need, that's why I wanted a little time to do some of this and go back. I know Vulcan doesn't charge that. Got Newell stuff here. They don't. And yet we're charging that. And then that's not the only charge. You have to now hire a surveyor.
Correct.
So that surveyor, because of my acreage, he has to do a quarter. It cost me $2,750. So you add all those costs up, and that's where I'm hearing the public saying, is this a money grab from you guys? And I said, no, because it costs extra money to do this. So I can't just justify that.
Well, and if I may, through the chair, and yeah, I can appreciate as an actual applicant going through the process, you're going to look at it
Yeah.
a little bit differently than maybe for council,
Yeah.
and you don't have to go
Exactly.
through all these scenarios and see what's going to cost you in your pocketbook.
Yeah.
And that's for something for council to decide, what's fair, what's equitable, and do you want to be on par with other municipalities or not? We didn't do, when we were doing these recommended changes, we didn't do an overhaul of our fee schedule in this
No.
exercise. We did,
No.
what are some tweaks that we've learned from the previous time? We didn't suggest any increasing of fees, because typically, one would suspect that as every year goes on, you're probably going to creep up the fees, cost of living, et cetera. And in this case, we didn't feel there's a need to. So we made the minor little text edits here and there, just some fees, actually brought a few down to help for clarity for us more so, and sometimes some confusion on behalf of the applicants. And then, as you note, the green with regards to the new land use bylaw requirements. So the best I have, and I don't know what your date of your information is, but we had spreadsheets that we looked at with Foothills, Rocky View, Newell, and Leduc County at the time. And we did our spreadsheets and did our analysis back in 2014. So, they're all over the map depending on how you look at it. A subdivision for us at the time was $800 for the first lot. In one municipality, it's $1,000. In another, it's $1,125. In another, it's $500, and another, it's $600. So where do we fit in all that if we were trying to sort of fit in on the general average? On the endorsement fee side, some municipalities charge $400 a lot. So in your case, you were dealing with 2 lots involved in a boundary adjustment, so that would equate to about an $800 fee. In another case, it's $800 per lot cost. In another one, it's as low as $200 for the first lot, and then in additional lots are $300. And then there's 2 more, Newell and Leduc, were $175 a lot, so you double that up.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea of what their calculations were. I'm not sure what year and where you're getting yours. I'm assuming it's probably more current than mine is.
Yeah. And you're right, I did notice that when you have multi-lots, that's in the developments, that some of the more the lots, the lower the price went.
Yeah, it gets a bit
for
tricky
the-
with the boundary adjustments because ultimately you're doing one exercise. So some municipalities are actually charging for each lot. So if you're doing a dual lot boundary adjustment, which typically involves 2 lots, some municipalities are charging for each of those lots, but it's just one process. We sort of followed that suit and did a per lot too, but it was just confusing matters. So actually, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah, have to.
we still have it there, so per lot. So in the per lot, say, I think it was, we changed the wording on it. I just want to bear with me here as I take a look at the wording.
Yeah. First lot, $900, if you go up there.
Yeah, it was per new lot, so
Yeah.
we'll just clean up the wording and say per
That's in your
lot.
multi-lots, but if you went up for boundary adjustments, you 450, 425, that's where I was talking about. Farmstead separation, 750, right?
Yeah, I was referring to
And
the
then under that
endorsement
is all the
final fee.
multi-lots.
Well, yeah, if we're talking about the application fee, so the application fee, as you can see, is about 6 different line items. The general premise being is the initial application fee is obviously a little bit up there. But as you add additional lots, you spend maybe a little bit more time possibly on it, but not much more time. And again, not factoring in staff time, but just sort of as a rough estimate of saying, okay, staff are going to spend a fair amount more time on a 100-lot subdivision, most likely, because there's a lot of different things that come into play than, say, a single lot.
Yeah.
So while we didn't do a numbers game on it, we just looked at it from a time perspective and said, okay, if our staff are spending a considerable amount of time on a more difficult application, maybe the developer does pay. And we saw that with other municipalities doing the same thing. As the lot count went up, the cost went up in different factors.
Yeah.
So you're telling me, Gary, that you did, anything that's left in white, clear, is from a previous review?
That's from what council passed in 2015.
Right, and the yellow ones is a new review you've done, or a new fee, a change in fee?
There was some slight changes in fees, most
Okay,
of that's just in relation to what we
okay.
almost overhauled.
And the green are because of the new land use bylaw that passed this morning. And I seen a red one someplace, I think.
Yeah, red's up, it just does 3 lines.
Yeah, there's 3 lines in red, nuisance and unsightly. Was that because of the bylaw? Oh, okay. So all the prices are set using the same methodology. You got a spreadsheet from a number of different counties, or?
Yeah, it's somewhat different. The one suggestion I would have for council, and it wasn't changed, is when we first did the schedule, home-based business was based on our fees were based on premise that once you get it, it's yours. We are in a 2-year cycle. Those are high in relation to. So if I had any suggestion on the fee schedule?
Yeah.
Would you be able to look at other municipalities, what they're charging, so that would be at the same methodology as the rest of the document?
The only piece of information I can give you off the top of my head is, in the case of Black Diamond, they're charging $100 for what they call a light, home-based business light. And then there's home-based business, minor and major, sorry. So it's home-based business minor, home-based business major.
And is that per year or per permit? 2 year? 2-year cycle? No, oh,
Excuse me, the question was in the Black Diamond case, is it
yeah, is that per year or per permit?
It was per year, but again. Thank you. It's my understanding that it was per year, but again, that was one example. We have Strathmore's here as well, and a level 1 and 2, as they refer to it as, is $150, and a level 3 is $310. What I don't have for you here is the length of their home-based business permits in Strathmore. And Strathcona County. So if you're looking for some direction with regards to what we'd recommend and do a comparison base, yeah, we need a little bit more time. As again, we weren't thinking we were coming in rehashing some of the old stuff, and we probably could have done a little bit better homework on the HBBs this morning since it was
Okay.
passed this morning. We can probably do that in about a half an hour's time, so if you want to do, we could probably bring this back in about a half hour.
In a half hour?
It's pretty quick to pull it up from other municipalities.
Okay, I'll wait a half hour and we can go back to the reports.
I've got one other question there. You have a permit application for natural resource extraction fee. What, I haven't got numbers on this. I think it's about page 3.
That's an old one, that's no change, that's the one.
Yeah.
I know, but whether it's old or new, I think so why would we, on natural resources? Okay. So that's, all right, that was my question, Ben, thank you. I thought, why are we involved in right away I think of oil and gas, right? And
Not in this instance,
And
no.
it was gravel. Yeah, okay. That was my question on that.
Brenda?
And I have one other one before I get, and then Brenda can have it. $1,000 for, on the second page on minor, a permit application for pre-construction stripping and grading, $1,000. So I know I've seen a lot of stripping and grading on the land use bylaw. And we talked about that on farming or in acreages and paying, getting permits to do that stuff. So here it is on the fee schedule, $1,000. Why? And is that everywhere? Is that on farmland, on acreages? Like it just says pre-construction. Yeah, it doesn't say here on the fee schedule. Yeah, the bylaw says, you're right.
Okay, so through the chair, if I can provide a little bit of clarity. So first off, with regards to stripping and grading, if you get a standard permit, says you're doing a residential build, we don't charge an additional stripping and grading permit fee to that. It basically is thrown in, if you want to call it that, with regards to the permit for a home. These fees for stripping and grading are attached as noted pre-construction. So if someone's on their parcel of land and they're stripping and grading as per the definition in the bylaw, and it's not tied to any other approved permit where we can have consideration for grading, et cetera, then yes, there'll be a fee charged to that. And there's one with regards to residential and one in regard to non-residential. So you'll see two different fee structures. Does that help answer the question?
Not totally.
Like West Highway 1 structure plan, that was stripped and graded and there's nothing built there. There's no development permits, there's nothing there.
One of the reasons we wanted to put that in.
It says accessory.
What my
and
ear's
farm
telling me on my left-hand side is this is why it's in here. Because we've come across stripping and grading issues over the years, and this is one way to hopefully have a mechanism in place that says, whoa, stop what you're doing in these cases. Let's make sure you're not impacting adjacent properties or you're dealing with issues such as weeds,
But it
ground
says here,
flow.
accessories and farm building structures. It's $200 in the same paragraph, and you say, well, no, farm is exempt. Well, it isn't by this. So,
Where are you at
Yeah.
now?
I get just above the stripping and grading.
It's not related to stripping and grading, but it's in that same line item, yes.
Yeah, it isn't attached, I suppose, right?
No, it's just.
Yeah.
Your typical 100 square feet plus.
Okay, Brenda?
So for stripping and grading, other municipalities consider it as, and they've included in theirs as for sale. So if you're going to be stripping and grading for sale, which would be, if you're stripping the topsoil to sell it to somebody, then that would be require a permit. They've defined it differently than what you just have a general stripping and grading pre-construction. So maybe a person should have a little bit of a definition better than that, I guess, of some type, because they've defined it in other things as if you're stripping and grading for pre-construction or to sell. Because then those that are stripping, like putting in driveways or like farmers or whatever, I know they're exempt, they say they exempt, but if the county so chooses to say it breaks our bylaw, you can go back in and say that to them too.
Through the chair, that may be one option. I'm not familiar with ever seeing it written that way, so I'm curious, what municipality is writing it that way? And keep in mind, council, too, as well, is that there is no black and white rule on fee structures. I mean, we can take one versus another, and they may have different terminology than we do, just like our land use bylaw is different than other municipalities, so it's not always apples and apples. Is it from Foothills?
So currently, when somebody comes in, wants to build an approach, and they get a permit for an approach, they're not hit with a stripping and grading fee too?
No, there's a road approach deposit that's required, and then the onus is on the applicant or developer to put that approach in at their cost. We don't charge a stripping and grading permit over and above that, no. The idea of all these fees is not to penalize the landowner, it's basically to put ourselves in line with other municipalities, because it's about the only gauge we have. And while in some cases maybe we're high, maybe we're low, we try to come in roughly in the ballpark on average, and that's, again, ultimately council's decision if they think some of these are excessively high or slightly higher, too low.
Okay, so you mentioned it would take you about a half hour for staff to recommend another fee for that, so we can wait a
home-based,
half
yes.
hour, and I can go back to reports.
So,
Yes.
Okay. So is there anything else that we require any research?
yeah, the stripping and grading one, but also I have an issue, I guess, at the very bottom page, where it says any other item not listed above is cost plus 20%. So I guess we're charging everybody cost plus 20%. And I'm wondering why we're charging 20%.
Through the chair, where exactly is that on the schedule?
Very last item. It says
Okay.
in there that we're cost plus 20%. So that tells me that we're not doing it at the cost.
Okay, thank you.
We're adding 20% on.
Through the chair, yeah, I was just going to say, I'm looking a little confused because that isn't under planning and development's fee structure. If you'll note, you'll see under the comments section or under the notes section, consult finance. So perhaps Mr. Henderson can answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that any item that a ratepayer would like us to do, I do believe it's very important to recover staff time costs. So I wouldn't necessarily say that when a ratepayer comes in and asks for one thing to do, yes, no problem, we can definitely do that, and we're more than happy to as well. I think what this does is it deters someone from coming in and using county staff constantly to do something for them or do something kind of related for them, maybe just to their benefit.
So I just want to, through the chair, back to Brian, if, I guess I have issue with that. We're here to serve the public. That's what our jobs are. The taxpayers pay our wages, mine, yours, both. And so for me to add 20% on and deter them to coming into council or to coming to the county for their assistance or whatever, that's not what I would think we should be doing. And looking at all the costs and the addition right from the fee services, the fire services, and the amount of the fines and have you there, I guess these are all new. And I questioned a couple of them, whether some of it should be federal offenses and not fines from our county. There's a couple in there that, so for me, cost plus 20% is unacceptable. If we have to do something for our ratepayers, that's what we're here to do. And so, and they pay all of our wages. So I guess to look and redo this fee schedule is one thing. But there's also a impede or obstructor. There's somebody impersonating a fire service member. Yeah, well.
So, Mr. Chairman, the cost of 20% has been in the fee structure for the county for years, first off. And if you want to change that to cost plus 10 or cost or losing, whatever you want to do, this only applies if there's no specific rate for that. So if you come in to get a photocopy, it's listed. It's all listed on there. If there's something you come in that's not listed on there, which I can't give you an imagination of what that might be, then it would be a cost plus 20%. If you don't like the cost when it's 20%, make whatever you want. Make it 70% of the cost. If you have to justify that to the ratepayer why they're paying for somebody else to get service. So that only applies when it's not a specific line item in this fees and rate structure.
And through the chair, I don't think that has ever come up as an issue. Been there, like you said.
I've only been here
forever.
4 years, but we've never used that line item that I'm aware of in the 4 years I've been here.
Never, for how long as I've been here, I've never had a ratepayer come into this council or come to me personally and with an issue on it either.
On the solar farm, there's an application, and there's two parts here, that's why I keep getting lost. Solar farm, $500 base fee, additional fee $50 per acre of coverage, wind energy conversion. It's talking category 2 is $500 fee for overall project plus $5 to $100 for each tower. I'm just thinking out loud, a $500 base fee for what? I'm just thinking of the last one that came through for an easement, plus $50 per acre. I don't know how many acres that one was. It's just, it's over 20.
Actually,
It doesn't really matter to the, I apologize, I don't mean to bring that up, but is that actually an appropriate fee? That's what I'm wondering. The amount of work and stuff that we have to put into that application, is that appropriate at $50 an acre?
through the chair. Well, keep in mind, what you're referring to here is development permits, so it's not a subdivision application or redesignation.
Right.
This is relating to permits. So permits, it's relative. Some permits are a lot easier to process than others. I don't know if we'd want to use the last one as a gauge of what they're going to be like in the future, because it's almost a test case practically. I know the one that was before that a number of years ago actually resulted in a whole new section of land use bylaw being created. So do you assign cost to that because of the offshoot results of that? We had to start somewhere, to be honest with you. So the idea was to say, what's something that might be reasonable? We understand in this case of solar farms, they may be covering a considerable amount of land. So do we want to do a per acre fee on top of that as well? So the bigger it is, the more cost it is.
Right.
Ultimately, an application is an application. A bigger quarter section versus a 20-acre one probably doesn't take much more time. So it can go either way.
Okay. Well, I was actually just thinking, I just didn't know if $550, $50 per acre really covered what we put into that permit for that type of an application.
Well, and again, through the chair, we're not trying, when we do the fee schedule, we're not trying to recover costs because they'd be considerably higher than that.
But we've got fees on here where we're more than covering our costs, and then the next one, we're not recovering our cost type thing. So I'm just trying to get the balance.
I think, if I may, through the chair, from a planning and development perspective, I'm pretty sure none of these fees cover staff costs with regards to the amount of time that goes into them. From the time we answer initial calls to accept the application, to get in front of MPC or to render a decision, I would hazard a guess if I was to go through all of them and give you that kind of calculation, I'm pretty sure that all fees in our planning and development fee schedule would be considerably lower than what it actually costs in hourly rates.
Okay. Two quick comments, just two statements from what I'm looking at. I'd like to see the home-based business applications reduced, and I'd like to see the first offense land use bylaw violation reduced. That's my comment.
Through the chair, may I ask if you have a suggestion on that first offense? Being it's
Well,
for everybody, it's
I'm just-
$1,000 now.
Yeah, I know it's $1,000, and I think land use bylaw violations can happen for a myriad of reasons, and can be an innocent type thing. Like $1,000 is definitely a lot of money. I think if I made an honest mistake, $1,000 is pretty hefty. So I'd like to see it maybe at 500. I mean, that's lots to say, hey, don't do that again. And then your second offense, your third offense, we should know better, right? But
And through the chair, and I appreciate the comments, and you're not going to have any objection from us with regards to reducing it. But just to reiterate to council as well, now that we have that penalty component in the land use bylaw, we're not going to be wielding our stick every 5 seconds we get an opportunity. We'll continue to do our initial sort of letters of inquiry, our warning letters, and if we need to, stop order or go to the violation part. So we will continue to do what we always do. We just try to resolve this without any imposition on the landowner. Like you said, a lot of cases, good percentage of it we can resolve through a phone call or a letter. But that said, if there's a need for council to want to lower that, no objection on staff's part.
So what you're saying, Gary, it's not an automatic fine?
Correct. I don't want council to walk away thinking that we're going to slap this on everybody as soon as they do something wrong. That's not how we want to operate. That was never the intent of the fines. We do have some situations where we have landowners that are clearly ignoring letters, ignoring stop orders, what have you, and hopefully this financial component may work in our favor to get their attention. Some municipalities use it, some don't, and we've been struggling with a number of landowners, parcels of land in violations over the years, and the suggestion is maybe this might help get their attention if there's a financial component attached to it, because the system for stop orders and that doesn't always work in the county's favor in some cases. This might help be another tool we can use in our toolbox.
Okay. Anything else? Ben?
Just a comment that, to council that they realize that this isn't attached to a bylaw. This is so that it's easy. If we have to go back in and change something, it's easier to do. It's just a motion of council. That's why it's not attached to any bylaw. So we need someplace to start. I've been through most of them, and some of your suggestions are fine. The majority of this, I don't have an issue with it. And if something comes up down the road, we can always go back in and revisit it. But just remember, it's not set in stone.
Alice?
Yeah, and you don't have an issue with it, but some of our ratepayers certainly do. And so I want to address something that a ratepayer brought here not too long ago to me. And when a person comes in and does an application, and maybe it's you want a transportation study, traffic study, or a water study, sewerage. So the applicant pays for an engineer or whoever they hire to do those studies. And then it comes back to planning. And then planning takes that and it goes out to our engineer. And then our engineer studies this, and then that bill, the cost for that person, is then put on the applicant. And the applicants are getting very angry about this because if you don't want to take their study, why are we asking them to go out and put 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, whatever that study is? They brought it in here saying, I've done the study, and then we put it to our engineer. He goes through that and say, yeah, this is good, or I want this or that. And then that applicant gets another $2,000 or $3,000 bill. And they feel it's a money grab. They say it's unnecessary. And then planning gets it. So the question has been posed to me, why do we have a planner? If the planner that we have hired is paid good money, why is that planner not able to look at that first study and say this is sufficient? Why does it have to have the second cost? Or the other thing is, don't ask the applicant to do the study, just send it direct to the one that the county is interested in doing the study. So why two studies for the same thing and the two costs go to the applicant? And that's making a lot of people in the county really upset because they said it's driving the cost of doing any kind of an application. They feel the county's putting the word out, we don't want you here. We don't want business. So, and I'm getting this quite regular because if you want to set business up, it's a double cost. So is there any way we can look at this, that says something different than having the applicant do two costs for, say, a transportation study or a road, a traffic study? How many vehicles are coming in? They do one, you send it to the engineer looks at it and charges again. So how could we minimize that for the applicant? and still get what the county wants.
So through the chair, how do I justify my existence? First off,
I told
don't
you
have-
that wasn't
first-
going to be easy on you.
First off, I don't have the pinky ring. You'll never see any of my staff, professional planners, or my development officers ever review an engineering report and sign off on it. We aren't qualified. While we could do a cursory look at something and maybe sort of get a bit of a gauge, I still don't want to put my staff nor myself in a position where we're going to make a call on something that we're not qualified to make a call on. We don't have the engineering qualified engineering staff in-house to deal with transportation impact assessments, to evaluate groundwater assessments, PS, private septic disposal systems. And so this idea of the peer review has been in play for many years before I even came to the county. Is it the most effective or efficient tool? I would say there's other options. There's other municipalities that charge an engineering fee. So if there's any engineering reports, they slap on a fee right at the beginning. And I think Rocky View still does that, and they have in-house engineers that can review that. They still charge a fee for that time and energy spent on it. Other municipalities, I'm sure, do it different ways. We've been dealing with the peer review since I've been, like I said, it's been in existence prior to, and it creates a lot of concern for some applicants more than others. Some applicants will come in, do their studies, have them done appropriately, hire the right professionals that come in for peer review from McElhaney, who the county contracts out to review all different types of reports that are outside of our qualifications. And they'll come back in, signed off. Pretty easy process for the most case. But yes, there'll be a review fee on a third party, and yes, the county has made a decision at some point in time not to cover that cost. They pass it back on to the applicant, cost of doing development, I'm guessing. And the developer or the applicant has a choice of whatever consultant they want to pick. They can find the least expensive ones or the most expensive ones. I think from my experience since I've been here, is you get what you paid for. We have had some applicants that have submitted applications or used old ones that, for lack of better words, didn't pass the muster test. But we wouldn't know that. We wouldn't be able to make the call on whether planning staff being we wouldn't be able to make the call on certain reports saying, okay, hold on a minute, that's a 5-year-old or 10-year-old studies, it's still valid. Does it meet the current provincial requirements, whatever the case may be? And so we forward that on to McElhaney to have that review done. If an applicant chooses to use an older report, or in one case we had an applicant submit reports that were done for another piece of land about half a section away, thinking it would apply on their lands. Well, it doesn't work.
No.
But we're not going to catch that right away, and we're not looking for it right away. So they thought that that might be the cheap way to do it, and what ended up happening is they got it, paid the review fee, it kicked back, said, no, we don't even know what this is for, it's not even for the parcel in question. Then they had to go back, hire a consultant, bring it back in, and again, they decided, in my opinion, probably to try to cut some corners. Peer review catches it again, say, no, that's not going to be an option, you can't do that, it doesn't meet requirements. They kick it back. So those duplicate kickbacks add up quick because the applicant's paying not only for theirs a couple of times, but for ours a couple of times. Those are usually the ones we hear back on the most. The ones that come in, get peer reviewed and go back, there may be some grumblings, but they're not the ones we're constantly replying back to or explaining it.
So I've been thinking about this, how we could, and the only thing I come up with, if the county had, you know, certain names that you know are reputable for the applicant to choose from and say, you know, I know you don't like to get into telling people what they have to do, but to cut down on the cost, that they, you know, we like McElhaney, you hire them, we accept their finding. Or is that an option, or is that getting too involved in, because if
Can I
there's a
ask you
number
a
of
question,
names.
Alice?
Yes.
How about if we say you have to use our lawyer? Conflict of interest.
Well, it's not our
It's
engineer.
the same thing.
No, it isn't. If you have names of contractors that are reputable, you can say, here's some list of that we accept from these people.
Ellen?
So, Mr. Chairman, we can bring this information back. I would suggest today is getting a little late in the day to bring it back, so we can bring it back on the 16th with some of the comments that have been provided and some more information for council's consideration.
Brenda?
And I guess just on that note, if you're going to bring back information, I'm curious to know on the fee schedule, roughly how much we collect in a year total, and that would be from the finance department. I'm sure that they have it all recorded. So they should be able to give a breakdown on the fees that are collected. And with the traffic fines and also the nuisance and unsightly, I'm curious to know how many fines that we've actually collected on the dance bylaw, because I believe that there's,
Yeah.
roughly 25 different fees. If you go up, I'm looking at this, and the dance bylaw is got, they're all there. And you know what? I'm not sure that we couldn't, minimum, maximum, I'm looking at that going, nobody wants to have a dance in this, in Wheatland County.
Mr. Chairman, the dance bylaw is under review currently as well. And
So-
that goes back to 2002. So we're going to be bringing that back probably in September for
So,
thorough
yeah.
review. So it's actually in the process right now. So
And there's some, like, I guess my theory is that if you're going to be reasonable, you talk about the land use bylaw and being $1,000 and those kind of things, but an unsightly is only $250. So you can do nuisance and unsightly, but you have $1,000 if you do an honest mistake like Rex talked about. And so I was looking at these fees and looking on websites and referencing. And that's why I say stripping and grading. It was mentioned, I believe, in Foothills, I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that one, Gary, but I think it's Foothills, where if it was stripping to sell, right? So those are the things, but I would like to know where the fines go. So, and with our traffic fines, do the traffic fines, you pay them here, or do you pay them at the courthouse?
Through the chair, I wouldn't be able to answer that question with our enforcement officers. But we can bring that to them, but
And I guess, because you have a $10,000 fine up there for unsightly and nuisance.
are you speaking about the land use bylaw fine or unsightly? Because
The master
unsightly, again,
fee-
falls under,
The
outside
master
of my
fee
department.
schedule, under the red, there's a $10,000 fine up there for unsightly and nuisance.
Okay, yeah, that falls
On
under protective
maximum on
services.
number 3, right? So my question is if we're going to collect 10,000, good luck with that one. If you're going to collect 10,000, what are we doing with the fines and where does that money go? Because if it's allocated to cleaning up the mess, but then, like, you have to have some relevance to why we're collecting $10,000. Is it going to clean up that mess? And if
Yeah.
it is it put in a reserve? What happens to it? And those are the questions I have to ask, so.
Mr. Chairman, we'll
We'll
bring
see you
that
on
back, that
16th.
information. It's not a problem.
Addition of corporate name, 3.4B1, I believe. Did I get it right? Nobody's complaining. 3.4B1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This RFD starts on page 490 of your agenda. So what this is our current GIS software and services provider. They have merged with another company merged with another company and created a new company. The new company that they created is MuniSite Ltd. All that's happening is that the operations in our current GIS and software services is now being ran out of another company. So with this, the intent of this RFD is to get an updated signature on the agreement.
Okay. Any questions? Council's wishes.
I'll move the recommended action.
Ben's moved the recommended action. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. And 2, request for decision, credit card limit increase.
Yes, this is a follow-up to Resolution 17-04-08. Council requested that administration investigate the feasibility of increasing the county credit card. So we have done that, and it is feasible for us to do. All we'll need is council's authorization to go ahead and increase the limit.
Alice?
I so move the recommended action, the administration to increase credit card limit to 20,000.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Couldn't tell there, Brenda, if you were voting or asking a question. I had to wait. Your hand was there. Transportation. Okay. Transportation Infrastructure Services Report. Press for decision, intersection improvements, Highway 1, Range Road 233.
I do have a report if you
Oh,
want.
I think
it
you got a
first,
report too, and I see you standing there. A report
That's okay.
first.
I think
Okay.
you've all got a copy of my report.
Yeah.
Just a couple of updates. On the road construction, the crew are down at Range Road 253 down by Carsland, and they've started to work there. They've been stripping and prepping for the work there. On the second page, the contract for the addition to the shop is ready for signatures. I'm hoping to maybe catch yourself and Alan this afternoon to get signatures on that if time works out. And the other update I wanted to give you was on the landowner meeting that we had for Range Road 270, which is our boundary road. The meeting went quite well, and I think we've got about half of the landowners signed up on that one, so it's coming along well. And that's my report, unless there's any questions.
Is there any questions for Dave? Alice?
Thanks, Dave. I did bring the landowner issue forward already with the Clarks.
Yes.
And the council has voted to pay him for the rocks,
Okay, good.
the $980 for the rocks, and not the water, which he was, the Clarks was agreeable to, and that you were following through with the crew on the cable that needs buried, the power cable, and the rest of the cleanup they're going to be looking after.
Yes, and a little update on that through the chair. I believe that they're there lowering that cable
they
right
are?
now, so yes, so,
Oh, perfect. That can move forward
okay.
then.
Yes.
The other part of, I've been doing a little bit of road checking out, as well as I've had some calls. 214 off of the boundary road there down in my area. You had done a new flare on the boundary road to the 214, and it needs gravel. You know where I mean?
I'm not quite sure what
Correction
you-
line, the
Oh,
correction line.
correction line, okay,
Yeah,
I wasn't.
I shouldn't call it boundary, it's correction. Sorry. From 242, or 842 west on 240, that road got washed out, and it needs gravel for 5 miles, the whole road. So it's really not good.
Yeah, there's actually a few roads like that in the county, so
Yeah,
thanks for that.
and
I'll
it's-
get it on our list.
Yeah, it's no fault of anybody, it's just what's going on. So as I'm doing my tour, I'm writing down the ones that I'm finding. Road 211, that's down by, straight south of me on correction, on that curve. You know, the curve south
That's
of me
Range Road?
on
Range Road, okay.
842. And you go east towards the pig farm. That road is really bad. It's rutting out, and there's just no gravel on it at all. The grader guy can't do much with it. There's just nothing there for him. So if we could get, there's a mile of it from the curve going
Okay.
east, right at Rougeau's there on the corner,
Okay, perfect.
and it's really bad.
I'll have them, my staff look at that.
Yeah. And I don't know if Alan wanted me to bring this up now. I had a call from Debbie Mitzner that's looking after a property in Clooney, and it's straight north of the community hall. There used to be, there's 3 houses along there right on that road north of the community hall. And there's a house just in behind that to the north. And apparently it's got a sewer field. And they want to sell it, but they can't use the septic field. They must hook up to the septic lines in Clooney, right?
Yes,
for the-
that's the bylaw,
And
yes.
they were told they needed to pay $110,000 for a lift station to hook into Clooney. And they talked to Mike, apparently. Yeah, you talked to her, Mike? And so she wanted me to bring this to council to, get to the bottom of why she has to pay $110,000 for a lift station. And Alan and I talked a little bit, but anyway, I'll put it back to you, Mike, I guess.
Great.
Somebody needs to
No,
explain
fair
it to me.
Yeah, so through the chair, I have been in contact with the Realtor on that property for the last number of years. Actually, it's not the first time that's been up for sale. I mean, under our bylaws, inside a hamlet, you're not permitted to have a new well or septic field. From what I understand, they've looked at that septic field and it's not compliant, so they'd have to upgrade it or put a new one in. So the other option is to tie into our sanitary system.
So you're saying they can put a new septic field in there?
I don't think they've ever actually reviewed sorry, they can't put a new field in. No, I'm saying.
That's what I understand.
No, yeah,
Because it's within the hamlet.
Yeah,
So it's
because
not allowed, right?
Exactly. The sewer bylaw, wastewater and water bylaw does not allow new septic
Right.
fields to be installed inside hamlets. So their other option is to tie into the existing sanitary system. Really, at that point, we leave it up to the landowner to go out and do their own quotes, get their own cost estimates on tying into that. I mean, it's depending on where it's servicing. If it's servicing a number of lots, it can be brought to council, and it's council's discretion if they want to fund a portion of that. From what I understand, this was the one lot that was to be developed.
So there's septic right in that first street going east and west there, north of the hall. There must be septic in those, there isn't in those houses?
There isn't, no.
There isn't?
Through
So
the
they're
chair-
on their own septic fields?
I believe on the north side,
Yeah.
west of the highway, the two houses there are tied into the manhole on the highway there. This property in question would either need to be, it's downstream of the highway connection. So where the lift station comes in is, they have two options. They can pump it, lift it from their location to the east up to the highway manhole, or other option is to go west down the street. It's about double the distance, and I don't think they've ever actually done a cost estimate on that. But I guess regardless, that would be by gravity. So they could do a gravity flow that way.
Yeah, so they wouldn't need a lift station if they hooked into that house west of them.
Well, if they tucked into the sewer main, which
Or
is
the
actually
sewer,
about
yeah.
a block and a half away from
Away,
the property.
yeah.
So it's a substantial construction regardless of which way you go.
Okay.
I mean, we've had this instance in other communities as well, and sometimes the landowner will pay for the installation, sometimes we'd like to service every lot in the community, but in the end, if they're not going to pay the whatever, it was around 100,000, I think is what the contractor had quoted them. It would be the county's responsibility to service that one lot for that price. So
Yeah.
a request was never come for council review on this or for a little bit payment from the county. Exactly.
Any other questions?
She wanted me to bring it to council, and I asked her to come and speak to council on it, but I don't see her here today, so what you're saying, Mike, is it's up to her to look at, the owner of this property, whatever way they want to go, but they could go to the west, but they have to pay the cost to hook that lot into the system that's there to the west, or to pump it to the one that's on the highway. That's what you're saying.
Those are the two options that we've reviewed, yeah. Like I say, if you look through the chair, if you look at the bylaw, if the property is adjacent to a sewer or water service, the county is basically obligated to tie in, and past practice, we've actually paid a portion of that tie-in just for an incentive to have development occur.
But in
Same
this-
time, we have the option, if it's not within the proximity of that lot, to put the full cost back to the ratepayer.
So in this case, it has to go back to the ratepayer? Is that what you're saying?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
So a question on that particular topic, what was the cost for gravity to be installed to the west, or to the west, right? Gravity,
To the west, yeah.
the gravity extension is
It
to the
would be-
west, what would the cost of that have been?
Yeah, through the chair, we actually hadn't done a cost analysis on that. We noted that was an option, but I don't believe the landowner had actually gotten a cost for that construction.
It's up to the landowner to get the cost for that.
Yeah, because we're not dictating which contractor they use. They have an option as long as it's within the realm of contracts that we used. They have the option of picking their own there, so.
Yeah, I do. I have one more. The transfer site at Clooney, what is going on with that? I got a few calls lately, and everybody's getting excited because they feel that you're going to be closing it down, and they say, oh, we have to have that, you know, because we haul our garbage there. So what's going on?
I'll let Mike speak to that one as well.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks. And through the chair, actually, I was working the last couple of days here. We're looking, last year, we started doing traffic counts. We started doing visitor counts on those sites just to see where the high loads were. And because of that, we've changed. We've added staffing to some. We've reduced hours to others. I mean, it's a really beneficial count. So at the same time, we're looking at all the sites and the ability of keeping them open even 1 day a week. I'll be bringing a RFD for the next council meeting that has a recommendation on a few of the sites there and what we're looking at for it. So.
Well, I guess, you know, a few of them have seen the sign on the gate saying, phone your counselor about this. So I didn't even know anything about it. So I said, well, maybe they're looking at the days. And then I started getting farmers' calls this morning, even before I left for council. And they said, oh, don't close that because, I mean, that whole area, that's the only, they either have to go to Hazar or to Gleason. So there's nothing in between there. And then the next one north of that would be Standard.
Right.
So there's nothing for any of those farmyards. And I know when I first got on 10 years ago, we had to go out in the ditches and pick up Chesterfields and springs and mattresses and garbage all over my area because people were just dumping things out. And that was before we had you know, fenced off areas to take Chesterfields and mattresses. And I know Dave started at that time, and it costs a lot of money for a gravel truck and a front end loader and 3 guys to go out and do this stuff. So we have to look at, maybe it's not as busy as you would like, but certainly have to look at what it would cost the county if we shut it down. We're going to be out there cleaning up ditches all over the place. So I think we also have to look at that as part of this decision, okay? Because the farmers are jumping on it and people in town are jumping on it. They're not happy to see that sign, okay? Keep me
We're
informed.
not closing it yet till we see a request for decision here.
Yeah.
Just a note on that, the sign that was put up was notifying of the new hours, nothing to do with potential closure of it, so just a note on that.
I didn't go and look at it.
Yeah, no, and I heard.
just got a call, and
I-
that's the way they were taking it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it had nothing to do with closure of it, so just so
Good.
everyone's aware.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike.
Ben?
Just a question to Dave. I had a talk with a fella in Hazar that has leased, I think it's a 99-year lease of the land north of our gravel pit up at Naglorns. And the access to that is through our lease. He wants to know if he can continue using that access until they decide what they're going to do with that site and whether they come for a development permit or something else, but that's the only access is, there's a road to there. I haven't gone up and looked at it. But
Yeah, it could well be. Could you give me the information after?
yeah.
Just by email would be fine.
That's the one Fish Lake Sand and Gravel had
Yes, yeah.
just north of there.
Yeah, there's, I think 80 acres there that, I'm surprised that it doesn't have access, but I'll look into it.
Okay, any other questions for Dave? Brenda?
Yeah, Dave, Dennis Biggrass and Range Road 261. I forwarded the email on to both Alan and yourself and Mike with regards to an answer as to who would be liable for that road. I'm not aware of any of the permits, so I did forward that email on to you on Sunday. You should
Yes,
have
I
it.
saw that, and I've asked some questions, and let's go back a ways. Based on road bans for farming industry, we all talked about, trying not to stop farmers from farming, right? So
Have you just responded to him?
I haven't yet, no, but I
Okay.
will be.
Okay.
We have given in the past permits for people to use roads, right, with the understanding that they don't get destroyed. And in this case, we did have a 50% ban on that road, and we allowed by permit for someone to haul on there. And the road is terribly soft. In hindsight, we probably shouldn't have done that, allowed that, but we did. Once the damage is done, it's kind of too late to go back, right? So we will keep this in mind for next year. That road will be banned, and it will stay banned. There won't be any permits allowed on that road because it is in rough condition. That road is, as you may know, on our long-term construction list, but we have had some issues with the landowners that were actually hauling on that road and ended up, compromising it, not agreeing for us to rebuild that road. So it's kind of a catch-22, like, but I think it's time to say, okay, there's no more relaxation of that road ban. It's going to be 50%, and it's going to be on there for the whole spring season. The road is better. Our guys are watching it, and we've added gravel, and we're tight blading it all the time, so it is passable. It may not have been a couple of weeks ago in the rain and everything, but as you all know, we can't go and do road construction, road maintenance when it's so wet, right? We have to stay off the roads too, because our graders are heavy and they would do as much or more damage than already has been done. But the road has improved, and we're watching it. It will settle down. It has in the past. Yeah, that road, the core of that road is full of topsoil, and we can't fix it until we have agreement with all the local landowners, and if they don't, it'll stay the way it is.
So you'll be responding to him as
Yes, I
to
will, yeah.
liability on that?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I just had it here. There it is. Township Road 244, which is just at the bottom of the hill here. We went straight south here, 2 miles, I think, and then headed east, which is that curve around the slough. I call it Wagner's Place, and then it heads to the 21. There's that 1 mile stretch.
Yes.
There's been water running over it pretty much every year. I'm just wondering what or if or where that's at on some sort of rehabilitation.
Yes, that is on our list to repair. I believe it's on our short project list. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's 3 or 4 years out. Well, it's in the distant future, I guess. I am looking at doing something there sometime this summer, just a road cap repair, I guess, if you call it. Putting a culvert in there to allow the water to flow through the culvert instead. Build the road up as much as we can without it affecting the wetlands, because as you know, that's an issue. Typically, from what we understand anyways, typically it takes about 18 months to get approval to do anything in the wetlands. So we will start working on that about 2 years out, so.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Yeah, I appreciate you that you're gonna do something there, at least temporarily. I know it's a water environment issue, so as long as we're doing something there, just, it's gonna help. Thank you.
Okay.
So just a general question to Dave and Mike. When you guys go out and redo the roads and reconstruct, and you change the ditches and you change the flow of the water where it goes, because you're actually changing the back slopes and stuff. So where does that go on your report that says that we're changing the water flow and those kind of things? Because we have roads that have been rebuilt and the water is flowing in the same location as where we're already having water problems. So when you guys do the construction of the road, do you reconsider the final drainage for that particular piece of road and where it's going to end up, and how much drainage is going into the ditches where it's already been an issue?
We do to some degree. We are held responsible for making sure that the water follows the natural drainage course. As you know, quite often roads are constructed across natural water courses. If a culvert is installed in it, it doesn't disrupt the flow. But quite often in the past, roads were constructed without that in mind because it was not a consideration. So now we have to deal with that when we are rebuilding these roads. So we have to the best of our ability, make sure that that water flows along its natural drainage course. So if it's to a slough that's the road splits and there's no release from that slough, that's where the water would have naturally gone. And as you know, we have no control over the precipitation over the last 8 years that has been quite high and increased the water levels in pretty much every slough in the county. And I think that is heightening the response or the water capacity in these sloughs that are trap lows, if you want, that there's water comes in but can't go unless it's evaporation or pumped out, you know, for irrigation. So we do our best to maintain the natural drainage.
Any other questions? Rex is moved. All in favor? Carried. Request for decision, intersection improvements.
I'll move that we approve the recommendation. I asked for that a couple of years ago. I'm surprised to see that they're going to do it.
Yeah, and we had through the chair, we had an opportunity this year with the contractor in the area, and I think it's a good idea. Our funding was high enough that we can incorporate it into the same funding reserve, and there'll be money because we're under budget to go back into the reserve. So I think it's a good opportunity to do that work, and we've been in discussion with Alberta Transportation for a few years about assisting with the funding. We had asked for funding for the one out in front of the office here, and for many unknown reasons, some known, I guess, we didn't get the funding, and we've asked again when we did the grading construction down on 222, and that kind of fell short. So I'm hoping we can hold their feet to the fire on this one and get that funding from them. So.
Okay, thanks. Any questions? All in favor? Carried.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And request for decision, Nightingale residential signs, area signs.
Yes, last council meeting, I kind of gave you all the heads up that we've looked at this situation putting some new signs in Nightingale as a, let's call it a trial, on a trial basis. We'll be using, I think you've all seen these signs. It's a residential sign that is being used, I believe, in Rocky View. I believe the spreadsheet for the costs are attached. Yeah.
So,
And I believe if this is successful, we could look at doing it in the remaining hamlets if council so decides. The total cost, if we did all of the large hamlets, would be about $6,870.
Go ahead.
okay, I got the
waiting.
floor finally. The council approve the installation of the residential area warning signs at the entrance of the hamlet of Nightingale on a trial basis that if successfully accepted, that would be used in the remaining hamlets, which I think is cool. So I'm waiting to hear what the residents of Nightingale and the area residents up there have to say about these new signs.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we got this little handout, I'm thinking it's for you too. Did you get one, Dave?
Yes, I did. Just let me leaf through all my papers here.
So, Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting on April 18th, there was a request, last-minute request that was brought forward from the town of Strathmore on the regional recreation facility, the in-kind services for the site grading, to change that to build a retention pond, essentially, which has totally changed the scope. So I believe that came on the 18th, and council had, I watched the video, and council had indicated if there was a letter requesting that council would consider that. So that's simply what's been attached in the handout. We didn't receive that till last Thursday, late in the day. So the letter's there requesting the change of scope, and Dave has attached the plans, one showing the proposed retention pond and the other one showing the site grading. And Dave can speak to any questions that council has in regards to that. So.
Question to the chair. What's the cost? This isn't a small job.
Well, through the chair, I think we had volunteered to do 2 weeks' worth of work there. So the cost.
But that's on the site that's already there.
Yes,
This-
yeah,
this is
Just,
off.
Yeah.
just for clarification, the county committed to do site stripping and grading, rough grading of the site,
That's right,
nothing off-site.
that's right. This is off-site.
And
it's
we
an extra.
estimated that to be around 2 weeks.
This?
No, the original work on the site was estimated to be around 2 weeks. And that's what the commitment that we brought to council,
Right. But
with
what's
the
the-
cost to council.
What's the cost of this one?
It would be substantially higher, I'm thinking. I'm not, we haven't been given any details, so we've asked, but
Because, before I could vote
it's
this,
much more complex than just stripping the topsoil.
I realize. I guess my comment would be, before going into any great detail, before I can decide whether or not I would agree to put it as cost that we would pay for that, I want to know what the cost is first.
Yes.
So I'm looking at 1 and 2.
Yes.
And I'm noticing that 1 is the actual school site.
That's correct.
And then this particular one that we have with the proposed plan, there's already an existing plan?
There's already an existing
Pond?
storm pond, yes.
Okay.
So if you were to take and fold one or the other
Yeah.
along, like if you take the one that has the existing storm, which is page 2, I think.
Yeah.
If you fold it along that line at the top of, horizontally,
Yeah?
and lay it on top of the other one, you will see that the storm pond is approximately a block and a half to 2 blocks away from the school.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm trying to get a grip of where this is
Yeah, to
in
the-
relevance to
the-
this.
The drainage goes to the southeast, and the pond is southeast of the schoolyard.
Okay. And why would this, does it say, I read the letter, but maybe I'm not reading it right. It's a stormwater plan which really has no bearing on the actual building on the school site for now. The school's a year away at least before they're built. So it's, to me, this stormwater plan is not an issue right now for me unless the town has an immediate thing. It's something that we can discuss further down, I guess, as a partner.
I guess it seems to be to them that they need to have that storm pond for the storm water to come off of the school ground instead of building the one on their own property. I don't really understand. But one of the biggest issues is that during my report, I reported that our crew's already down at Carsland working on one of our grading jobs. So we would have to pull them back to come back to do the work. We had kind of set a deadline that was around May the 1st, and that's gone by already, so.
So just in your opinion, I guess what I'm asking is why do they need the stormwater pond built immediately now? And there's something that we could look at future or winter time or when our guys aren't out doing something. Is this something that needs to be addressed right this minute? Does it look like it has to be part of the project is my question to you, Dave.
The urgency was because our crew is not
We're
going to
there.
be available after May the 1st.
So when would be the next time that they would be available further down?
Sometime in the fall, I guess, after freeze up, because we've got lots of projects to do.
And there's already an existing pond there. The other question for you is, because there's an existing pond there, are they doing the environmental work on this and not us?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
So there's some questions we have to
Well,
ask.
there's a whole bunch of questions that we've asked them, and we have not received any answers. Like, I haven't seen the design. I don't know where they want us to put the topsoil. I'm not confident with our staff doing the excavation. Stripping is a completely different issue. There's no, or at least not as much liability doing the stripping as there is doing excavation, especially of a water reservoir. There's just another layer of liability and complexity to it.
Complexity. Good word.
Yeah, for me, it's just another not enough information type thing. I'm trying to just look at this and go, if that school wasn't built, would that pond still need to be there? So if that pond still needs to be there regardless of the school, then what are we doing there? So there's some other need for that other than just the school's need. So if it wasn't, then I guess that's part of the project and I'm fine with that. I do need to know the cost, but that would be my first question even before the cost. I would like to just accept it as information until we can get more information. I would make that a motion.
Rex has moved. Is there any other questions? You said the timeline's passed on getting the stripping done.
Our crew is busy working, and we'd have to pull one or two of the scrapers back to do it as quickly as we can, I guess, if that's council's wish, but we're already going. It's perfect weather. Every day that we waste, we waste. It would be
Okay.
a shame.
For sure. Okay, the motion is accept this letter here as information. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. You voted in favor, Ben? It's carried. Agriculture, Community and Protective Services Report. Got one right.
Good afternoon. Reeve Kester and members of council, it's a treat for me to be here on behalf of our team, and our brand new general manager, Angie, is here with us today. So, Mr. Chairman, members of council have seen my report. There isn't any new items that I've got to address on those, so I think I'll leave that in sense of time today. If you have any questions, there's the professional development reports are there for your information, as well as the action tracking report. So I'll leave it at that before we move on to the request for decisions, Mr. Chairman. If you have any
Is there any
questions.
questions? Alice?
I have one, and I think probably it'll be answered when we talk about the deputy fire chief's position. I was at an AGM at Standard, and there was some comments made about getting training. And I said, well, I bring it forward at the meeting. So I think that maybe through Judy would be answered in that fire chief's one for a training program, because that was I remember we talked about that before we had the fire review, was to get all our fire departments up to a certain standard of training. And they were feeling that they didn't have anything last year, and then this winter they haven't had any training, and they were kind of getting concerned because they're farmers, you know, and they go out and they're farming, and you know, in the winter's the best time. So they were kind of excited about getting more training and wondered why it wasn't moving ahead. So that's a question. If you want to leave it till later, that's my one question, Jim.
Through the chair, that is a part of the deputy fire chief discussion we want to have, and we'll have Judy discuss that at that time. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
So on the Homesteads Municipal Government Board hearing, that should have come down, and you've not heard back from that, or why haven't we heard back from that?
Through the chair, we have not received any communications on that.
Have we contacted them for a decision?
No, we have not contacted them for a decision. They had advised us that they make that decision in due course of their processes, and that we'll be advised upon them making that decision.
All right.
I've got, I like the way, you know, you're putting this report together, planning and development, and where all of the development is. And I know the one at Rosebud River Ridge was asked at one of our meetings about why it's taking so long to move that one forward. And it seems here that they have moved some forward just recently in February. So is that back up and moving? Rosebud River Ridge?
So through the chair, thank you for your comment, Councillor Booth. We've expanded the report this month to include a couple other items that we are working on, so that's why you've seen those. Appreciate you noting that. You're speaking of the action tracking report, I'm sensing here. So the Rosebud River Ridge report, we have had consultation just recently through the CAO's office with the planner that is in charge of that file. And he has been in contact with the applicant. The applicant is the representative with that, and we are awaiting information from them. So that is
that's the best you can do.
Best I can say at this point in time. But they have been communicated with. We are on top of that file. There's just information that has to be provided by the applicant, and he has been discussing that directly with them. So,
yeah, I really like that. It kind of keeps the council a little bit up to date of what's happening with the developments. So I do like the way you've made that report. So
through the chair, thank you for that comment, and please like to recognize the CAO Parkin is the fellow that directed us to develop that. So
you mean I have to do that? Thanks, Alan. Because that is, and with the economic development, those are questions that come out of that economic development board. And they say, well, what's happening with our development? Of course, it's good to have the ladies excited about moving forward with economic development within the county. So thanks for that. And let's hope they get back to you now and get moving that forward.
Through the chair, Councillor Booth, thank you for your comment, and I will sure advise our planning team of that. So we appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor? Request for decision, Carsland Fire Hall.
Through the chair, Mr. Chairman, I want to just read that council approved the recommendation of the Fire Capital Committee to move forward with building the proposed Carsland Fire Hall. The Fire Capital Committee meeting resolution states that Gerhard moved that Wheatland County Fire Capital Committee recommends that Wheatland County Council commence to move forward with the building, design, and pricing of the proposed Carsland Fire Hall. Mr. Chairman, financial resources are just about there. We feel confident that we're going to be able to reach that 40%. The numbers are noted there in the key issues and concepts. Our Fire Capital Committee, from their years of experience in this business of building fire halls and working together as a team, state to us that we really need to get started on this. It's a long-term project to get this in place, so they're recommending getting started. The little bit of money that's left to get, we feel very confident that we can get that through the community through a number of different sources. Carsland community has been very active in a number of ways, and we're extremely proud of what they've been doing and some of their community leaders there. So that's the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Council's wishes. Don?
Also move the recommended action.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Request for decision, mutual aid fire control plan.
Also move.
I
Also
think
move
there's a
that,
presentation.
well, it's an
Isn't
annual,
there?
no, it's annually we do this.
Through the chair, it's just an annual renewal. We've gone through it very thoroughly in 2015. For council's attention, our fee, should we not declare a state of local emergency or a SOL, has increased, but I can't imagine ordering helicopters and airplanes unless we actually had a state of local emergency declared. That's all I had to
I
contribute.
might want to see.
Me too.
Okay, Brenda, did you still moving
Yeah,
it?
the council approve entering the annual mutual aid fire control plan with Alberta Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Request for decision, deputy fire chief position.
Mr. Chairman, the request for a decision is that council approve the addition of a deputy fire chief position within the Wheatland County Agriculture Community and Protected Services Department, reporting to the Fire and Emergency Management Coordinator. Further, the council approve amending the Wheatland County organizational chart to accommodate this position. Mr. Chairman, we've been blessed to have the Fire and Emergency Management Coordinator that we have here subsequent to our reorganization through our CAO's office. Done a lot of really good things, but we're tremendously busy in that department. The key issues, for sure, Mr. Chairman, we talk about the hiring of this, and the necessity for that is to develop and manage a fire prevention program, to deliver educational assistance and leadership. Mr. Chairman, to assist in the leadership and strategic direction, and to coordinate training, and that came up today. Councillor Booth had asked about that. I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time on this. I'm sure the council has read it. I just want to recommend and read the implications of the recommendation. We recognize that the taking over of the Wheatland West and Carsland Fire Departments was subsequent to the hiring of the Emergency Management Coordinator position. Those duties were added on to that subsequent to Judy being here for a few months, and she's just done a tremendous job in getting that up and running and getting SOGs and all the rest of the bylaws that are needed to do that. In the meantime, she has her job that was in place and continues to be in place. So what ends up happening with that is we need additional assistance to work with her and to back her up in cases when she's not here. We need to be able to enhance our oversight and our operational work at our Wheatland West and Carsland Fire Departments, to work with our volunteer firefighters. We've got a tremendous team there. We want to continue to develop that. We want to protect the people, the property, and first responders by doing fire inspections, and Judy can speak to that a little bit under the Safety Codes Act. That's something that we had stopped doing some time ago that the province offers. We wanted to provide consistency in service delivery, and then lastly, we wanted to do what Councillor Booth's inquiry was about, is a robust training program. So I think, Mr. Chairman, with that said, everybody, I'm sure, has read the business case. Our CAO brought this tool to us back in 2013, which is a really cool device to have, because it really makes one think about all the things that one needs to think about before bringing in a position and what that position is actually going to do, and the pros and cons with that. The executive summary speaks to the things I've already suggested that are those reasons for us. We need this position, Mr. Chairman. And there's a tremendous amount of work that has been done and continues to need to be done so that we can continue to protect our residents and our firefighters and provide the best service that we can, one that our CAO expects and one that council, of course, does as well through him. So I think the executive summary comprises the things that are the key items. We've identified some project objectives, and the key thing, of course, was backup to the Fire and Emergency Management Coordinator, dealing with mutual aid agreements, joint fire service training, or joint providing funding joint training exercises, strengthening partnerships, organizing and developing regional strategic strategies and planning and training. And of course, as we go through this, we might ask, why does it exist that it is here? The reason that it does, Mr. Chairman, is that close to 50% of the fire calls that we get in our fire in Wheatland County is in Carsland and Wheatland. There's a tremendous amount of work that those volunteers do. So we really need to be proud of them, and we are, and to provide that support to them. With that said, you can well imagine, Mr. Chairman, when our emergency management coordinator is on vacation, when that leadership is not there. There needs to be a backup expert that has that knowledge to continue providing that day-to-day service. And the captains and the chiefs that are in those departments do a bang-on job. Judy prepares them well when she is away, but there's always things that come up, as we all know, in this emergency business. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, I think I'm going to leave that end of it. I know you've read the business case. The money is in the budget for this position. Our CAO, our human resources, myself and Judy have done a tremendous thorough job of this to make sure that everything is in there and everything's been thought of and critically analyzed so that we can go somewhere with this where you'd be proud of us to do so. So I think I'll leave it at that. I would ask that Judy could talk a little bit about training, because that is a significant part of the position in order to answer that question.
A little bit.
Through the chair, I'd just like to address the training concerns. As I understood it, Councillor Booth, that you had two concerns. One is that no training had been offered in the previous year, and would that be addressed with this position? The first is training has been offered. Standard has chosen not to send any people because it wasn't courses they felt they wanted to attend. And also Wheatland County bowed out in favor of supporting Hazara's course. So due to a really bad blizzard, everything had to get changed for the Hazara firefighters who were hosting a course. And as it turned out, those same people were wanting to take the course we offered, so we canceled our course. It just haven't had time to reschedule it. And training is a humongous component of this position. So to be a three-pronged effect, we would do fire prevention, which is something we haven't really robustly done in my time here. And that would include inspections of new buildings. So we could actually be an equal partner with planning on new stuff going on. And of foremost concern is the school just outside of Standard that will need regular inspections. We'll be able to do investigations on any dollar loss fire. So we have adequate reporting to the Fire Commissioner's Office. We'll have a more robust picture of what it is that we do. And a public education program, which is more than what we've ever done before. And then training would be the third, at least a third of that position. And then helping me with operational stuff. So does that answer the question through the chair?
Thank you. Council's. Go ahead.
So back through the chair to Judy. So you're saying that Standard was offered some training, but they've already done that training? Is that what it is? Oh, okay. So with this coordinator, then remember we talked about it before when we talked about this whole thing that we were going to try and have all fire departments at a minimum level of training. So is there a program, or will this help with that program to train our firefighters in all of our 9 departments to that they can go to a higher standard? Would that work with this fellow coming on?
Through the chair. It's such a big, deep question, and with the time that we're allotted, I'll try to give you a succinct Reader's Digest version. There's been some aversion to trying to achieve an NFPA level 1 or 2 standard. And recently, the Fire Chiefs Committee, we had a consensus that they would try. So I'm very pleased and excited to hear their willingness to move forward with new learning. And we are definitely meeting the new fire service agreements minimum standards. So those courses are continuing to be offered. We receive grant money, and also council has recognized that training is important. And in our budget, you annually set aside $20,000 to go to training. So it is my mission every year to completely spend every penny. And I think we've done that adequately. Sometimes we hit and miss. They say they have X number of firefighters that they want to send to a course, and it turns out there isn't that many, or there's more. So we really need someone to take this by the horns and build it to where I think we need it, because we've grown the department considerably in 3 years, and by that I mean every fire department in Wheatland County. And it's now at a point where I can't spend the time to manage that to grow it further. And I really do think the chiefs are receptive to having all new firefighters gain 1001 level 1 and level 2 training, which is remarkable from where I was 3 years ago when they didn't want to talk about it. So,
and that came up in a conversation that as all of the fire departments get new members, then they have to get in to get that level of training, you know, to move forward. So which is, I see, I was talking to somebody in Gleason, and they've got some new, which it's all exciting, and to see the change in some of the departments getting these volunteers coming in, because a year and a half ago, they were all saying nobody wanted to come, right? So it's good to see the change around that people are, young fellows are signing up, and gals, right?
Okay, councils.
Thanks, Judy.
Wish? Bernice?
Also move the recommended action of the
Okay.
deputy fire chief position.
Any questions? Said it was money in the budget.
Okay, so this is within the
That's what was
money
said.
that's already budgeted for, is that?
Mr. Chairman, when the draft budget came in, this was an addition that was added. Council approved that. When the final budget was approved, it was identified as a separate item, and it was identified in there for
Okay,
2017, 2018,
I missed that.
2019 moving forward. Yeah, it was, I don't remember what page it's on, but it was actually 2 pages of it, because it was every line item to do with the wages and everything, like to do with benefits and everything in there.
Okay, good.
All in favor? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Okay, correspondence. Letter on APWA. Public Works Week, I believe.
I'll make a motion that we accept the 3 items as information.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay. I didn't count them up. For 4 items, all in favor? Carried. I think so. Rex has moved adjournment, and if all in favor? Carried, thank you. Checks to sign, I believe. You signed them already? Okay, reports to sign then. Well, they might be done too.